The war between the Velari and the Keth had lasted for 70 years. No one remembered exactly how it started. The old ones said it was about a planet, a beautiful world with green forests and blue oceans. But that planet was gone now, burned away by its dying sun 40 years ago. Still, the two species kept fighting. They had forgotten how to do anything else. Lieutenant Park Do-hyun was not supposed to be anywhere near this war. He was a human, a member of a species that had only recently started exploring the stars. Humans were new to the galaxy. They were diplomats, traders, and observers. They did not fight in other people's wars. They did not take sides. This was the rule, and Do-hyun had followed it his entire career. Until today. His small diplomatic shuttle had been traveling through neutral space when the battle started. Two fleets, one Velari and one Keth, had found each other near the moon of Eris 4. They opened fire without warning, without care for anything caught between them. Do-hyun's shuttle was hit by stray weapons fire. The engines failed. The ship fell toward the moon below. He survived the crash. His pilot did not. Now Do-hyun walked through the ruins of what had once been a settlement. The buildings were broken and burned. The streets were filled with dust and debris. This place had been home to thousands of people once. Now it was empty, except for the soldiers who had claimed it as a temporary base. The soldiers were Velari. They were tall beings, almost 3 meters in height, with dark blue skin and 4 arms. Their faces were flat and wide, with small eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. They did not notice Do-hyun as he moved through the shadows. He was small compared to them, easy to overlook. He was searching for a way to contact his people when he heard the shouting. A group of Velari soldiers was dragging someone through the main square. Do-hyun pressed himself against a broken wall and watched. The prisoner was not Velari. She was Keth, the enemy species. The Keth were smaller than the Velari, with silver-gray skin and large amber eyes that seemed to glow from within. This one was female, young by the look of her. She wore simple clothes, torn and dirty from rough treatment. Her hands were bound behind her back. The soldiers threw her to the ground in the center of the square. A Velari commander stepped forward. He was larger than the others, his armor decorated with symbols of rank and honor. He began to speak in a loud voice, addressing the soldiers who had gathered to watch. Do-hyun did not understand the Velari language perfectly, but he understood enough. The prisoner's name was Yuna. She had been captured crossing into Velari territory. Her crime was carrying medical supplies to a Keth civilian colony that had been cut off by the fighting. She had been trying to help sick and wounded people. For this act of mercy, she would be executed at dawn. The soldiers cheered. The commander smiled. Do-hyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had seen many things in his years as a diplomat. He had seen cruelty and kindness, hatred and love. He had learned to stay neutral, to observe without interfering. This was the human way. This was how his species survived in a galaxy full of older, stronger civilizations. But as he watched the soldiers chain Yuna to a metal post in the center of the square, something inside him refused to stay silent. She did not cry. She did not beg. She simply stood there, her chin lifted, her amber eyes staring straight ahead. There was no fear in her face, only a quiet acceptance. She had known the risks when she crossed the border. She had known she might die. And she had gone anyway, because people needed help. Do-hyun thought about his pilot, dead in the wreckage of the shuttle. He thought about the civilians who had lived in this settlement before the war came. He thought about 70 years of fighting, millions of lives lost, and a planet that no longer existed. He thought about walking away, finding a working communication device, calling for rescue, going home. He thought about it for a long time. Then he started planning. The settlement was not large. Do-hyun spent the next several hours moving carefully through the ruins, counting soldiers, noting patrol patterns, and searching for useful supplies. There were approximately 40 Valari soldiers in the base. They were confident and relaxed, believing themselves safe in their own territory. They did not expect trouble beyond the northern hills. Do-hyun could see distant lights and hear faint sounds of movement. The Keth were out there, gathering their forces for a counterattack. They knew about the prisoner. Of course, they knew, but they would not come to save her. Do-hyun had studied both species during his training. He understood how they thought to the Valari. Yuna was a trophy. Her execution would be broadcast across their networks, proof that the enemy was weak and could be captured at will. It would boost morale and justify the continuation of the war. To the Keth, Yuna was a failure. She had been caught, captured, humiliated. Her survival would be a reminder of their inability to protect their own people. Her death, while tragic, would be convenient. They would mourn her as a martyr and use her memory to inspire hatred. Both sides wanted her dead. Neither side would lift a finger to save her. That left Do-hyun. He found a small building near the edge of the settlement that had not been completely destroyed. Inside, he discovered supplies that the Valari had overlooked. Food, water, a medical kit, a knife. Not much, but enough. He sat in the darkness and thought about what he was going to do. He was one human against 40 Valari soldiers. He had no weapons, no backup, no plan of escape. If he tried to free Yuna and failed, they would kill him too. His government would be embarrassed. There might be diplomatic consequences. Other humans might suffer because of his actions. But if he did nothing, a woman would die at dawn for the crime of trying to help people. Do-hyun closed his eyes and remembered his grandmother. She had been a doctor during the troubles on Earth, long before humans reached the stars. She had treated anyone who needed help, regardless of which side they were on. When people asked her why, she always gave the same answer. Because they were hurting, she would say, and I could help. What other reason do I need? She had died when Do-hyun was young, but her words had stayed with him. They had guided him through years of diplomatic training, through countless missions to distant worlds. And now, in this ruined settlement on a moon he had never meant to visit, they guided him again. He opened his eyes and stood up. 20-7 hours until dawn. 27 hours to find a way to save a woman he had never met. From armies that would kill them both without hesitation, it was impossible. It was foolish. It was exactly the kind of thing that humans did. Do-hyun smiled in the darkness and got to work. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly overhead, indifferent to the small dramas playing out below. The Valari soldiers laughed and drank around their fires. The Keth forces moved silently through the hills. And in the center of the square, Yuna stood alone in the cold night air, waiting for a dawn she believed would be her last. She did not know that help was coming. She did not know that one human had decided to defy the rules of his own people, the expectations of two empires, and the cold logic of war. She did not know that sometimes, in a galaxy full of ancient hatreds and endless conflicts, hope came from the most unexpected places. But she would learn. They all would. The night grew colder as Do-hyun watched the Valari camp from his hiding place. The soldiers had settled into their routines. Some slept in makeshift shelters. Others sat around small fires, talking in low voices. 2 guards stood near Yuna, but they looked bored and tired. They did not expect anyone to try anything foolish. Do-hyun spent hours studying the camp. He noted which guards were alert and which were lazy. He watched the commander enter a large tent on the eastern side of the square and not come out again. He counted the weapons, the vehicles, the communication equipment. He memorized every path, every shadow. every potential escape route. Then he waited down. It was past midnight when he made his move. He had found a bottle of Terran whiskey in his emergency supplies. It was meant for trade or gifts, a small luxury from Earth that other species often enjoyed. Now it would serve a different purpose. The guard standing closest to Yuna was young, though Yun had watched him for hours. He was nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder, jumping at small sounds. He was not a veteran. He had probably never seen real combat. He was exactly the kind of soldier who might be tempted by a friendly stranger offering a drink. Do-Yun approached slowly, making sure the guard could see him. He held the bottle up and smiled. The guard raised his weapon, startled. "Easy," Do-Yun said, keeping his voice calm. "I am human. Neutral. I mean no harm." The guard hesitated. He had heard of humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the strange new species from the distant arm of the galaxy. They were small, weak, and harmless. They were not a threat. "What do you want?" the guard asked. "I was caught in the battle," Do-Yun explained. "My ship crashed. I have been hiding in the ruins, waiting for rescue. I heard there was a Valari camp here. I hoped you might have a communication device I could use." The guard relaxed slightly. This made sense. Humans were always getting caught in places they did not belong. They were curious and careless, like children. "You should speak to the commander in the morning," the guard said. "He will decide what to do with you." "Of course," Do-Yun agreed. He held up the bottle again. "In the meantime, perhaps you would like this? It is a drink from my homeworld. Very rare, very valuable. Consider it a gift for your hospitality." The guard stared at the bottle. Do-Yun could see the desire in his eyes. The nights on this moon were long and cold. A drink would help pass the time. "I am on duty," the guard said, but his voice was uncertain. "One drink will not hurt," Do-Yun said. "Your prisoner is not going anywhere, and I would appreciate the company. It has been a long and frightening day." The guard looked around. His partner was far away, barely visible in the darkness. The commander was asleep. No one would know. He took the bottle. Do-Yun talked while the guard drank. He told stories about Earth, about human cities and human customs. He asked questions about the war, about the Valari, about the guard's family and home. He was friendly and curious and completely harmless. The guard relaxed more and more with each drink. Within an hour, the guard was unconscious, slumped against a broken wall. Do-Yun took the guard's weapon and moved quickly toward Yuna. She watched him approach with those strange amber eyes. Even in the dim light, he could see that she was exhausted. Her skin was pale. Her body trembled from cold and hunger. But her gaze was sharp and alert. "You are the human," she said quietly. "I saw you earlier. You were watching." "Yes," Do-Yun said. He knelt beside her and examined the chains. They were heavy but simple. His knife would be enough. "Why are you doing this?" Do-Yun paused. He looked up at her face. "Do I need a reason?" "Everyone needs a reason. The Valari hate us because we are different. The Keth hate them for the same reason. Hatred always has a reason." She tilted her head, stunning him. "But you have no hatred for me. I can see it in your eyes. So why risk your life?" Do-Yun thought about the question as he began cutting through the chains. "My grandmother was a healer. She helped anyone who was hurt, no matter who they were or what they had done. When I was young, I asked her why. She said it was because pain does not care about sides. Suffering does not care about politics. A wounded person is just a person who needs help. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was." The first chain broke. Do-Yun started on the second. "You were carrying medical supplies across enemy lines. You knew you might die. Why did you do it?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. There's a colony on the other side of the border. Small, mostly families. The war cut them off from supplies months ago. They were running out of medicine. Children were sick. Elderly were dying. She took a shaky breath. I am a healer, like your grandmother. How could I do nothing? The second chain broke. Yuna stumbled forward, weak from hours of standing. Do-hyun caught her and helped her stay upright. Can you walk? He asked. I will manage. They moved through the shadows, away from the square, away from the sleeping soldiers. Do-hyun had memorized the patrol routes. He knew which paths were safe and which were watched. He guided Yuna carefully, stopping whenever he heard footsteps, pressing against walls whenever lights swept past. Where are we going? Yuna whispered. My shuttle crashed a few kilometers south of here. The ship is destroyed, but the emergency beacon might still work. If I can activate it, my people will come. And then what? Your people are neutral. They will not want to be involved in this war. No, Do-hyun admitted. They will not be happy. There will be consequences for what I am doing. But that is a problem for later. Right now, the only thing that matters is getting you out of here alive. They reached the edge of the settlement. Ahead lay open ground, rocky and barren, leading toward the distant hills where Do-hyun's shuttle had fallen. Behind them, the Valari camp remained quiet. No alarms, no shouts. They had made it. Then Yuna grabbed his arm. Wait, she said. There is something you should know. Do-hyun stopped. What? The Keth forces beyond the northern ridge. They know I was captured. They know I am here. Will they try to rescue you? Yuna laughed bitterly. No, they will attack at dawn after my execution. They will use my death as a rallying cry, a symbol to inspire their soldiers. My survival would ruin that plan. Do-hyun felt his stomach tighten. So both sides want you dead. Yes, to the Valari, I am a trophy. To my own people, I am a convenient martyr. Either way, I am more useful dead than alive. Do-hyun stared at her. In all his years of diplomatic training, he had learned about war. He had studied strategies in politics and the mathematics of conflict. But nothing had prepared him for this. A woman condemned to die by enemies who hated her and allies who had abandoned her. A war that had become so twisted that mercy itself was treated as a crime. Then we need to move faster, he said finally. If we can reach my shuttle before dawn, we can call for help. My people may not want to get involved, but they will not abandon one of their own. You are risking everything for a stranger, Yuna said. Your career. Your safety. Maybe your life. Why? Do-hyun looked back at the Valari camp, at the fires burning in the darkness. Then he looked at Yuna, at this exhausted healer who had crossed a war zone to help children she had never met. Because someone should, he said. Because if no one ever takes a risk, nothing ever changes. Because 70 years is too long to fight over something that does not even exist anymore. He held out his hand. Now come on. Dawn is coming, and we have a long way to go. Yuna looked at his hand. She looked at his face. And slowly, carefully, she took it. Together, they walked into the night. Dawn came like fire across the sky of Erisfor. The sun rose over the eastern mountains, painting the clouds in shades of red and orange. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like the colors of blood and flame. Do-hyun and Yuna had been walking for hours. The ground was rough and uneven, covered with sharp rocks and deep cracks. Yuna was weak from 2 days without food or water. She stumbled often, and Do-hyun had to help her stay on her feet. But she never complained. She never asked to stop. She kept moving forward, one step at a time. They could see the wreckage of Do-hyun's shuttle in the distance. It lay in a shallow valley, broken and burned, like a dead bird fallen from the sky. Smoke still rose from the engines, thin black lines against the red morning sky. "Almost there?" Do-hyun said. "Just a little further." Behind them, alarms began to sound. The noise was distant but unmistakable. Sirens and horns and shouting voices. The Valari had discovered their prisoner was missing. They would be searching the settlement now, checking every building, questioning every guard. It would not take them long to find the unconscious soldier and the empty chains. "They know," Yuna said. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "They will come for us. Then we need to move faster." They ran. Or tried to run. Yuna could barely manage a quick walk. Her legs shook with every step. Do-hyun put his arm around her waist and half carried her forward. His own body was exhausted, screaming for rest, but he ignored it. They did not have time to be tired. The shuttle grew larger as they approached. Do-hyun could see the damage more clearly now. The hull was cracked open. The cockpit was crushed. But the rear section, where the emergency equipment was stored, looked mostly intact. The beacon might still work. It had to work. They were 3 kilometers away when the Valari found them. The soldiers appeared from the north, coming around a rocky hill in a line of armored vehicles. There were 12 of them, heavily armed, moving fast. They spotted Do-hyun and Yuna immediately and changed direction, cutting off the path to the shuttle. Do-hyun stopped. Yuna sagged against him, breathing hard. "We cannot outrun them," she said. "No," Do-hyun agreed. "We cannot." The vehicles surrounded them in minutes. Soldiers jumped out, weapons raised, forming a tight circle. The Valari commander stepped forward. It was the same officer who had ordered Yuna's execution. His face was twisted with anger. "Human," he growled. "You have made a serious mistake." Do-hyun straightened his back and met the commander's eyes. "I am Lieutenant Park Do-hyun of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. This woman is under my protection." The commander laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Your protection? You are one small creature with no weapons, no army, no power. What protection can you offer?" "The protection of humanity." "Humanity?" The commander stepped closer, towering over Do-hyun. His forearms flexed with barely controlled violence. "Your species is barely out of its cradle. You have explored a handful of stars. You have no great fleets, no powerful weapons, no ancient traditions of war. You are nothing." "Perhaps," Do-hyun said. "But we are watching. We have been watching your war for years. We have recorded everything. The battles, the bombings, the atrocities on both sides. And we remember." The commander hesitated. Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. "What does that mean?" "It means that one day, your war will end. Maybe in 10 years. Maybe in 100. But eventually, someone will get tired of fighting. Someone will want peace. And when that day comes, they will ask what happened. They will want to know the truth." Do-hyun pointed at Yuna. "This woman crossed a war zone to bring medicine to sick children. That is her crime. She tried to help people who were suffering. And you want to kill her for it. She is the enemy. She is a healer. She carries no weapons. She has killed no one. Her only sin is caring about lives that your war would rather ignore." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Some of them looked at Yuna, really looked at her for the first time. They saw a small, exhausted woman in torn clothes, barely able to stand. They saw no threat, no danger. Just a person who had tried to do something good and been punished for it. The commander raised his weapon. "Enough talk. Step aside, human, or die with her." No. The word hung in the air. Simple. Final. Absolute. Before the commander could respond, new sounds filled the morning. Engines. Weapons charging. The rumble of heavy vehicles approaching from the east. The Keth had arrived. Their forces came over the hills like a wave. 30 soldiers in fast attack vehicles, weapons ready. They had been planning to assault the Volari camp at dawn to avenge the prisoner who was supposed to die. Instead, they found the prisoner standing in a rocky valley, surrounded by enemies, protected by a single human. The Keth vehicles stopped. Their soldiers dismounted. Now, there were two armies facing each other, with Doin and Yuna trapped in the middle. A Keth officer stepped forward. She was tall for her species, with dark silver skin and eyes that burned like hot coals. Her armor was scarred from many battles. Her face showed no emotion at all. "Human," she said. "Move away from the prisoner." Do-Yoon turned to face her. "No, she is Keth property. You have no right to interfere. She is not property. She is a person." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Do not lecture me about what she is. I know exactly what she is. She is a liability, a symbol of weakness. Her capture has embarrassed our people. Her survival would continue that embarrassment. Then change what she symbolizes," Do-Yoon said. "Right now, she represents failure. But if you let her live, she becomes something else. She becomes proof that mercy is possible. That not everyone has forgotten how to be kind." "Pretty words," the Volari commander snarled, "but meaningless. This war will not end because one human plays hero." Do-Hyun looked at him. Then he looked at the Keth officer. Two enemies, both holding weapons, both ready to kill. Behind them, soldiers waited for orders. In front of them, a healer and a diplomat stood in the middle of a battlefield. "You are right," Do-Hyun said. "This war will not end today. Not because of me. Not because of her. But every war ends eventually. And when this one ends, people will ask how it happened. They will want to know who took the first step." He spread his arms wide, making himself an easy target. 70 years. That is how long you have been killing each other. 70 years of battles, of bombs, of children growing up in fear. And for what? A planet that burned before most of your soldiers were born. A conflict that no one remembers starting. "We remember," the Keth officer said coldly. "We remember everything the Volari have done to us. And they remember everything you have done to them," Do-Yoon replied. "That is the problem. You both remember the pain, the loss, the hatred. But neither of you remembers why it started. Neither of you can imagine how it ends." The sun continued to rise. The sky grew brighter. And in that rocky valley, surrounded by weapons and enemies, one human stood his ground. "Someone has to choose differently," he said. "Someone has to take a risk. Someone has to say that enough is enough." He looked at Yuna, at this woman who had risked everything to help strangers. She already made that choice. She chose mercy over fear. She chose compassion over hatred. And you want to kill her for it. He turned back to face both armies. "So go ahead. Kill us both. But know that the galaxy is watching. Know that humans are watching. And know that we will remember. We will remember everything." The silence stretched on, and no one fired. For 17 minutes, no one moved. The sun climbed higher in the sky. The morning mist faded away. The air grew warmer, but the tension remained cold and sharp like a blade. Soldiers on both sides stood frozen, weapons aimed, fingers on triggers. They were waiting for an order, waiting for someone to make the first move. Do-Yoon could feel his heart pounding in his chest. His legs trembled. His mouth was dry. He had never been so afraid in his entire life. But he did not move. He did not back down. He stood in the space between two armies and refused to step aside. Beside him, Yuna was barely standing. Her body swayed from exhaustion, but she held her head high and kept her eyes open. If she was going to die, she would face death with dignity. The Volari commander broke the silence first. "This is foolishness," he said. His voice was rough with anger, but there was something else there too. Something that sounded almost like doubt. "We cannot stand here forever. Give us the prisoner, and you can go free. Your government will never know what happened here." "My government will know," Do-hyun said calmly. "And even if they did not, I would know. I would have to live with the memory of standing aside while an innocent woman was murdered. She is not innocent. She violated our borders. She aided our enemies. She brought medicine to sick children. That is not a crime. That is basic decency." The Keth officer stepped forward. Her name, Do-hyun had learned from captured communications, was Sergeant Mira. She was a veteran of many battles, respected by her troops, feared by her enemies. But today, she looked uncertain, confused by the situation in front of her. "Human," she said slowly, "I understand what you are trying to do. I even respect it. But you do not understand our war. You do not understand the history between our peoples." "I understand enough," Do-hyun replied. "I understand that you have been fighting for 70 years. I understand that millions have died. I understand that both sides have committed terrible acts in the name of victory. Then you understand why we cannot simply stop. Too much blood has been spilled. Too many lives have been lost. We owe it to our dead to continue fighting." Do-hyun shook his head. "No, you owe it to your dead to find another way. They did not die so that their children could die too. They did not sacrifice themselves so that the killing could go on forever." Myra's eyes flickered. For just a moment, her mask of coldness cracked. Behind it, Do-hyun glimpsed something that looked like pain. Old pain, buried deep, never fully healed. "You speak as though it is easy," she said quietly. "As though we can simply decide to stop hating. But hatred is not a choice. It is a wound that never closes. It is the memory of everyone we have lost." "I know," Do-hyun said. His voice softened. "I know it is not easy. I know that peace is harder than war. Fighting is simple. You have an enemy. You try to destroy them. Peace means looking at that enemy and choosing to see them differently. It means accepting that they have suffered too. It means admitting that maybe, just maybe, you have also done terrible things." He looked at the Valari commander. "Your people have burned Keth colonies. You have killed civilians. You have used weapons that poisoned the land for generations." The commander's face hardened, but he did not deny it. Do-hyun turned to Myra. "Your people have done the same. You have attacked Valari medical ships. You have executed prisoners. You have taught your children to hate before they could walk." Myra said nothing. Her silence was answer enough. "Both sides have blood on their hands," Do-hyun continued. "Both sides have reasons to hate. But that is exactly why this has to stop. Not because either side is innocent, but because both sides are guilty. You are trapped in a cycle of revenge that will never end unless someone chooses to break it." The Valari commander laughed bitterly. "And you think you are the one to break it? One small human with no army, no weapons, no power? I do not think I can end your war," Do-hyun admitted. "That is beyond me. But I can save one life today. I can show that mercy is possible. I can prove that not everyone has surrendered to hatred." He gestured at Yuna. "Look at her. Really look at her. She is not a soldier. She is not a spy. She is a healer who wanted to help people. When she saw children suffering, she did not ask what side they were on. She did not calculate the political consequences. She just tried to help. That is her weakness," the commander said. "No," Do-hyun replied firmly. "That is her strength. That is what makes her better than any soldier on this field. She chose compassion when hatred would have been easier. She risked her life for strangers when walking away would have been safer." He pointed at the soldiers surrounding them. "Can any of you say the same?" Can any of you name one time when you chose mercy over revenge? One moment when you saw your enemy as something other than a target. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Some of them looked away. Others stared at the ground. The question hung in the air, demanding an answer that no one wanted to give. Una spoke then. Her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper, but it carried across the silent valley. I had a brother once, she said. His name was Taiho. He was a soldier, like you. He believed in the war. He believed we were fighting for something important. She paused, gathering her strength. He died 3 years ago. A Valari bombing raid. He was not in a military target. He was visiting our parents in a small village near the border. The bombs did not care. They fell on soldiers and civilians alike, on warriors and farmers and children playing in the streets. Tears rolled down her silver cheeks, but her voice remained steady. After he died, I wanted revenge. I wanted to kill every Valari I could find. I wanted them to suffer the way I had suffered. But then I became a healer. I learned to save lives instead of taking them. And slowly, I began to understand something. She looked at the Valari soldiers, meeting their eyes one by one. Revenge would not bring my brother back. Hatred would not heal my pain. The only thing that helped was helping others. When I saved a life, when I eased someone's suffering, I felt like Taiho's death had meaning. Like I was honoring his memory by choosing a different path. She turned to Myra, to her own people. I know you have orders. I know my survival complicates your plans. But I am asking you, as a fellow Keth, as someone who has lost everything to this war, please, let me live. Let me prove that there is another way. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not the cold silence of a standoff, of enemies waiting to strike. It was the silence of people thinking, questioning, wondering if maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Dahyun watched the faces around him. He saw anger and hatred, but he also saw doubt. He saw exhaustion. He saw people who were tired of fighting, tired of losing friends and family, tired of a war that had taken everything and given nothing back. He did not know if it would be enough, but for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt something like hope. The sun continued its slow climb across the sky. And in a rocky valley on a forgotten moon, 2 armies stood frozen, balanced on the edge of a choice that could change everything, or nothing at all. The Valari commander lowered his weapon first. It was a small movement, almost invisible. Just a slight dropping of the arm, a relaxation of the grip. But everyone saw it. Everyone understood what it meant. This changes nothing, he said, his voice harsh. The war continues. Our people will not stop fighting because of one prisoner. I know, Doyun replied. If you take her, both sides will consider you an enemy. Your neutrality will be questioned. Your people will face consequences. I know that too. The commander stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to his soldiers. Fall back to the settlement. We have wasted enough time here. The soldiers hesitated, confused by the order. They had expected a fight. They had expected blood and death and victory. Instead, they were being told to walk away. Now, the commander barked. Slowly, reluctantly, the Valari soldiers returned to their vehicles. Engines started. Weapons were lowered. Within minutes, they were moving away, heading back toward the ruined settlement, leaving behind a cloud of dust and questions that no one could answer. Sergeant Myra watched them go. Her face was unreadable. You realize what you have done, she said to Doyan. It was not a question. I saved a life. You interfered in a war that was not yours. You embarrassed both sides. You gave hope to people who cannot afford hope. Is hope really so dangerous? Myra did not answer. She turned to Yuna instead, studying the healer with cold eyes. You should have died. It would have been simpler. Simple is not the same as right, Una replied. Something flickered across Myra's face. Pain, perhaps. Or regret. Or the ghost of a person she had been before 70 years of war had ground her down to nothing but duty and anger. Go, she said finally. Take your human protector and go. I will tell my superiors that you escaped during the confusion. I will tell them you are dead. Why? Una asked. Myra was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Because I had a sister once. She was a healer, too. She died trying to help wounded soldiers after a battle. Both sides were there, Keth and Valari, too weak to fight. She did not care which side they were on. She just tried to save them all. She looked away, toward the distant hills. The Valari soldiers she saved reported her position. Their reinforcements came. They killed everyone in that field hospital, wounded and healthy alike. My sister was the last to die. She kept working until they shot her. Myra's hands clenched into fists. I have hated the Valari for 20 years because of that day. I have killed dozens of them. I have burned their ships and destroyed their bases. But the hatred never goes away. It just grows heavier, until you cannot remember what it was like to live without it. She looked at Una again. You remind me of her. Of who she was. Of who I used to be, before the war took everything. Una stepped forward, reaching out to touch Myra's arm. The sergeant flinched but did not pull away. It is not too late, Una said softly. It is never too late to choose differently. Mira laughed. It was a broken sound, full of pain. Maybe, maybe not. But today, I choose to let you live. That is all I can offer. She turned to her soldiers. We are leaving. This mission is over. The Keth forces withdrew, disappearing into the hills as silently as they had come. Soon, Dayun and Una were alone in the valley, surrounded by nothing but rocks and dust and the wreckage of a crashed shuttle. Dayun let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His legs gave out, and he sat down hard on the ground. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. We survived, he said, almost not believing it. We actually survived. Una sat down beside him. She was crying again, but this time the tears were different. Relief instead of grief. Hope instead of despair. You saved my life, she said. You stood against 2 armies for a stranger. Why? Dayun thought about the question. He thought about his grandmother, about his training, about all the reasons he had given to the soldiers. But in the end, the answer was simpler than any of that. Because it was the right thing to do, he said. Because someone had to. Because if we only help people when it is safe and easy, then we are not really helping at all. They sat together in silence, watching the sun rise higher in the sky. After a while, Dayun forced himself to stand. Come on, he said. We need to reach the shuttle and activate the beacon. My people will send a ship. We can be off this moon by tonight. The beacon worked. It took 3 hours to repair, but finally a signal went out calling for rescue. A human corvette arrived before sunset. Dayun and Una were taken aboard, given food and water and medical care. They were safe, but safety came with a price. The diplomatic fallout was enormous. Both the Valari and the Keth filed formal complaints. They accused humanity of interfering in their internal affairs. They demanded punishment for Dayun. They threatened to cut off trade and cooperation. Dayun was recalled to Earth. His career was destroyed. He spent the next 2 years in hearings and tribunals, defending his actions to politicians and bureaucrats who cared more about treaties than lives. He was called a fool, a troublemaker, a danger to human interests in the galaxy. He never regretted what he did, and something unexpected happened. Una's story spread, not as official news, but as whispers, rumors, Stories passed from person to person. The healer who crossed enemy lines to help children. The human who stood alone against two armies. The commanders who chose for one moment to lower their weapons instead of firing. Small things. Insignificant things. In the vast machinery of a 70-year war. But small things add up. Within 5 years, the first ceasefire talks began. They were difficult and slow, full of anger and mistrust. But they happened. For the first time in decades, Valari and Keth sat at the same table and talked about something other than killing each other. Within 10 years, the Treaty of Eris was signed. It did not end all conflict. There were still border disputes, still occasional violence, still deep wounds that would take generations to heal. But the worst was over. The dying had slowed. Children were growing up in something that almost resembled peace. No one gave Do-hyun credit. He was a footnote in the history books, mentioned briefly as the human diplomat who caused an incident on Eris 4. His name was forgotten by most, remembered only by scholars and historians who studied the war's end. He did not mind. Yuna found him 15 years after that day in the valley. He was living on Earth now, in a small house outside of Bizin. He had retired from diplomatic service, or rather, he had been quietly pushed out. He spent his days reading, gardening, watching ships rise into the sky. She came to his door on a spring afternoon, when the cherry blossoms were falling like pink snow. "I found you," she said. Do-hyun smiled. She looked different now, older, stronger. She had become an ambassador for her people, working on the peace process, building bridges that had seemed impossible. She had turned her survival into a purpose, her second chance into a mission. "I heard about the treaty," he said. "Congratulations. It would not have happened without you. It would have happened eventually. People get tired of war. Maybe." Yuna stepped closer, looking into his eyes. "But you gave us permission to hope. You showed us that it was possible to choose differently. That mattered. That still matters." They sat together in his garden, drinking tea, watching the blossoms fall. They talked about the past and the future, about the things they had lost and the things they had gained. They talked about healing and forgiveness and the long, slow work of building a better world. "Do you ever regret it?" Yuna asked. "Giving up your career? Being forgotten by history?" Do-hyun thought about it. He thought about the life he could have had, the success, the recognition. He thought about all the things he had sacrificed for one moment of defiance, one stubborn refusal to stand aside. "No," he said finally. "I do not regret it, because I know the truth, even if no one else remembers. I know that on one morning, on a forgotten moon, I chose to do the right thing. I chose mercy over safety. I chose hope over fear." He looked at Yuna, at this woman who had become a symbol of peace, who had turned her suffering into strength. "And I know that it mattered. Maybe only to you. Maybe only to me. But it mattered." Yuna smiled. She reached out and took his hand. "It mattered," she agreed. "It mattered to the whole galaxy." They sat together until the sun went down. Two people who had defied armies, survived impossible odds, and proven that sometimes one choice can change everything. Outside, the cherry blossoms continued to fall, and somewhere in the stars, on 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 ships, people were learning to live without war. It was not perfect. It was not complete, but it was a beginning. And beginnings are enough.